All right, welcome back, guys, to another God Moves segment. I have the beautiful, powerful woman of God, Miss Evelisse, on today to share some of her testimony and basically showcasing what you guys already know, that God moves today, same God back then, same God right now. And I want you to know He moves for me, He moves for her, and He moves for you. But let's focus a little bit on the her factor. Evelise, thank you so much for being a part of this segment. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous, and thank you for having me
Yes,
um,
ma'am.
to be a part of the show, be a part of what you are doing, and the move of God in your life.
Yeah, I've known Evelise, I don't know how many years now, but it's been years, and I have seen amazing things happen, like anywhere she goes. Like I was just saying right before we started that I only know snippets of her testimony, so I'm going to be learning with you guys. But the snippets that I've known and the snippets that I've like witnessed for myself have really inspired me. And I've actually talked about her on the show like a bunch of times, so y'all know it's true. But you get to hear straight from you. Evelise, how did you come to know the Lord and not just like know of him, like maybe there's a God, but like actually know relationship wise with him?
Um, so I am 40 years old. I say that with a smile. And I didn't really get to know God until 8 years ago, until I was when I was 32. I didn't grow up uh in the faith. I didn't grow up as a Christian. In fact, I was raised as a Catholic. My family was in the Catholic tradition, but they were very invested in what we call as Hispanics as as empiritismo, um, and that is really just worshiping saints and doing the rituals of that. Um,
Like the Hail Marys and whatnot?
not the Hail Marys, but really worshiping
Oh, like, yeah, like Peter, you know what I mean? Like I've seen, because I don't know the Catholic faith too much, but I know they have these candles like Archangel.
yes.
Okay.
Worshiping Santa Barbara, Saint Lazarus, doing spirituals, rituals surrounding that, providing fruits, speaking in different languages. They were actually part of, being, and I would say possession of those spirits. And that happened um until the age, I think I was 14 years old. And it was my mom that God actually started speaking to first.
Hmm.
She was going through a lot in her life with relationships. And it was an ex-boyfriend of hers from back in her high school age that got her involved in Christianity. And she started giving her life to the Lord and stopped worshiping saints and stopped doing things like that. And so um, when I was 17, and just to give you a brief uh, history of where my came from, and why it led me to encounter Christ or even start to, was I dealt with a lot of rejection. Dad wasn't in the picture. In fact, I remember when I was living with my grandma for a short time when I was from, I want to say, 4 till 9 years old. I used to watch my dad just walk by me with my other sisters and his new family and just not even acknowledge me. And during that point, my mom was dealing with some relational issues. So she had left me with my grandmother and had my brother. And so really low on rejection. I was actually a child who acted out in school, got in trouble all the time. And so when I went to go live with my mom, um, she was in another relationship with my stepdad, and he sexually molested me for about 4 years. So when I finally spoke up about the abuse, nobody believed me because, again, they thought I was seeking out attention. They thought I was, just making things up. And
Yeah.
so from 14 to about 17 years old, I was just buck wild. I was in and out of group homes, arrested, sleeping on trains. I was involved in a relationship with a guy who was 16 years older than me. Actually, um, lost my virginity to him. And so my life was insane. It was just, I dropped out of high school in the ninth grade. I didn't even go to high school, to keep it real. And so through my mom giving her life to Christ and stopping the spiritual acts of witchcraft, I would say, I ended up going to a church called Christ Tabernacle out in Brooklyn. And they used to have um a youth outreach called Aftershock, where they brought out the youth and really spread the gospel through them. And I remember just being a part of that and giving my life to Christ and was baptized, but wasn't really connected to the Lord. Didn't learn nothing about the Bible, didn't learn nothing what it what it meant to be a Christian. But I knew that I needed God. So that happened at 17. And so it really set the trajectory of my life. I think that God just planted that seed. But from 17 on till I was 32, I was dealing with a lot of hurt, a lot of unforgiveness. Mad at my mom, mad at the world. And I ended up in drugs, ended up in alcohol, ended up married, got my GED, enlisted in the Army, which was a dream of mine since I was 6. And I met my husband there of 17 years. But I wasn't healed, right, from all the trauma that I was experiencing. And I was very naive. My husband was 21 years older than me too. So I didn't see the signs that he was struggling with, which was alcohol, and he was big on cocaine. And so the last 7 years of our marriage, I ended up indulging in with him, from drinking to doing cocaine to experimenting with crack with other friends and meth and Molly. Like, I was just doing a little bit of everything. And I was just broken. And so at in 2010, I got sick, to later find out it was related to the military. But doctors couldn't diagnose me. And so in 2012, just, when just God just takes away a desire from you that it only him. And I didn't really have a relationship with him. This is what's crazy. I just got tired. I got tired of drinking. I got tired of the scene. I got tired of doing the same thing and getting no results. I talked to Terry, was his name, and I was like, listen, my mom was already retired in Florida, and I told him, I'm leaving to Florida in 2 weeks. With you or without you, I'm gone. I'm just tired. And I remember 2 weeks. I remember telling him in the end of April, and I remember moving to Florida in 2012, May 9th. And I didn't even think back. I left everything behind, just took up a luggage of whatever I needed, and left. And what's crazy is my mom was already here. She was already plugged into a church. And she didn't know what I was struggling with. I kept it a secret, and we were very much apart for a very long time. And so I ended up going to church with her, and at that point, I gave my life to her. But I would like to tell you that it stopped there. And the truth of the matter is that it didn't. Me and my husband end up finding the same friends, the same drugs, the same everything. And it was just a cycle. And I remember being in a table with a whole bunch of people, skied out at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember just crying out, like something in me just started crying out and saying, God, if you just let me go back to school, I will change my life. It would just let me go back to school. And everybody looking at me like crazy, like, what is wrong with this person? And I believe that God was speaking to me in that moment. And so my relationship with my husband ended up in divorce after trying several times to work it out. But from the time that I moved to Florida till 2016, God was doing the work in me. I ended up going back to college, and God spoke a vision over me. And that is what I do now.
Shout it out, girl. Shout it out.
I run a nonprofit for underserved people. But the funny thing is that God would only give you a vision.
Yeah.
He would give you a spigot of what you're passionate about, and then he'll build upon that, right? So being an at-risk youth, being a person who know what it is to live through poverty, know what it is to not have a dad in your life, know what it is to feel rejection from people, even from those that you love, and see what God wants to use that, right? When I was in school and I had to do a presentation of where I saw myself in 5 years, I didn't have a relationship with God. You got to understand that God was really, I knew of him, but really had nobody in my life to mentor me about who he was, about his plan, about his purpose. Really didn't know the word of God. And I remember going in front of the class doing a presentation of leading a community center for at-risk youth. I didn't know that I was prophesying over my life, y'all. And I didn't know that I was capable of doing that. And to prove that, like, I gave the vision to everybody. Like, I was passing it on to the pastors at church. I was passing it on to my friends. I was telling them, hey, how about you do this? How about I was giving them ideas, because the truth of the matter is I didn't think I was capable of anything.
Yeah.
I had no self-worth. I didn't have an identity. People spoke into my life that, God couldn't use me, pastors. And so from 2016 to 2019, I was trying to give away what God only created me to do. And it wasn't until one day, after being hurt by many people and churches and pastors, and that my mom had a dream and said, Evelisse, I had a dream that the vision that you have been passing on to everybody else is for you. And I'm going to help you do it. And even that was unreal. It was surreal to me. Like, what do you mean?
I remember, I don't want to interrupt, but I do remember there was a night that we were at the same place, you know what I mean? And I remember you were talking about your vision for Hands of Hope, because you said that God gave you the name, and you were talking about all of the areas that you wanted, you wanted to help clothing, you wanted to help for the feeding, and like I remember you had like blah, 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 like this is. And I remember that night that you were actually being counseled by, no, you're all over the place. You need to focus it to one. Like, I remember that. And I remember thinking, don't put her fire out. I remember that day really, really well, because I was like, wow, and then I was like nodding, well, maybe that is good advice, that it should, because everybody talks about the niche, right? You're supposed to like niche it down. You were like, I see all this. And they were like, focus it. And so I remember like, man, don't, you gotta fire, let her burn. But then I was like, well, maybe they're also right. I don't know how that works. And like, it's so cool that just X amount of years later, that like all of the things that you talked about and then some, I have witnessed, because I came into your life when, hands, I won't say the name. I don't know if you said it. I'm saying the name, doggone it. Hands of Hope. I was there before when it was just implanted, you know what I mean? But I was in the room when people were trying to narrow you back down. I was in the room for that.
I think the important part for anyone that has a vision is if God gave you a vision, it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be
Yeah.
so big that you have to be careful who's around you and who's speaking into your life, because you're right. I do remember that. And I remember talking about advocacy. I remember talking about different components of the vision. And people telling me, nope, that's not the way to do it. Nope, you got to narrow it down. And a part of me was discouraged, right? But what's important is only you know what God has spoken to you. Only you know the vision and what it entails. And so many people were telling me, you got to narrow it down. You got to start here. And I was like, no, because if God gave it to you, he will provide the provision for you. He will put the people in your life. He would allow you to plan it out accordingly. Right. And so, yeah, people are saying, nope, this is not it. And that's because they were putting God in a box. And God is not to be put in a box, right? God is to be taken out. And when he talks about you're going to do abundantly above more that you can ask for or think, right? That is this big vision that I was speaking about, right? But only I knew. And it took a great amount of faith for that to be produced. And you're right. He gave me the name. And this is what's funny, because I was going through a big transition with friends,
Yeah.
family, a lot of heartache, a lot of separation when it comes to people. He just pulled me, but he prepared me. And I'm looking at it now, and it was like, wow, God, because not everybody is going to go with you where God is calling you. And so he gave me the name during a sermon at a church called When the Blessing Hurts. And I remember it so vividly that I even have the recording up to this day of that message. And he showed me that it was hands licking together. And truth be told, the blessing hurt. He stripped me away from everything.
Yeah.
Every single thing. And the nonprofit was launched, Hands of Hope was launched in 2019, but it actually manifested itself in 2020 during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Which everybody told me that I was insane. Everybody told me that I was crazy, right? And for the world on lockdown, it was cray-cray, right? Because people were losing their jobs, people were losing resources, people were losing everything. And here we are planting a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Right. It's real important to share your vision with those that are able to empower you, encourage you, and help you. And most of the time, those are 2 or 3 people. And you got to be okay with that.
Let me tell you, I have to stop it right here. I just have to say, so like Evelisse, for me with Flipside, I had zero confidence. I still to this day struggle with confidence in myself as a leader and in myself and all this. We were just having this conversation the other day. But I will go to people with my ideas for Flipside, and I would be like almost dependent on them helping me achieve this thing, because there's no way I could do it. And I remember there was a day that Evelisse came to my house, and this is actually what wound up launching Flipside. I don't know, she might not be on this way on y'all's screen. Maybe she's this way, but right now she's right here. Okay. And she came to my house. I don't even remember why, but she came over and I showed her this thing, and you were like, that has someone's name all over. Like I hold this book and it's all over it. This does not say you. And I remember like, yeah, actually that's true that like the vision that I originally had. And I do believe this person was, help. It's literally what I was asking for. Help me make this happen. And, but that wasn't what it was supposed to be. It was for me to do. And it took you telling me that this isn't it. And I realized that you were right. And so it's so funny. I really didn't realize that 2019, December 2019 is when I filed for Flipside Mentorship to become or not for profit, but when I did the online filing. And in 2020 is when we actually started doing it as a virtual mentorship program because of COVID. So I knew our paths, but I just really had no clue how parallel. But I do know one thing, that Flipside, had it not been for your conversation with me in December, I wouldn't have started Flipside.
Amen. And it's important. So I've learned what that wording meant through my years of experience is you got to be careful you don't mission drift.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
that's
tell me what that means, mission drift.
when you mission drift is when you have a mission or a vision for a specific thing. So for us, it's a nonprofit or Flipside or Hands of Hope, right? And then you have outside entities telling you, hey, well, what about you do this? And what about you do that? And you start incorporating other things into that. And
That wasn't meant to be.
all of a sudden, your mission, what you intended to begin with, doesn't look like nothing that you intended, right? And it looks like a totally different mission. And so now you're drifting to something totally different, and it's not what God called you to do, right?
Yeah.
And so what's important for those that have a vision that God has placed on their heart is that you write the vision, right? God talks about this in the word, and you make it plain. And then you allow people that will be able to shape your vision to what you feel, right? And know that you can't detour from that. And I've had a lot, of people come in and say, hey, how about you do this? And how about you do that? And I've been very specific, or I've said, no, this is where we're going. You can either be a part of it, right? Or start your own thing, but
Right.
we're not detouring because we have to be obedient to what God has called us to do. And the enemy would like to see us be distracted and off course.
So let me ask you a question, because I know a lot of people face this. And how do you know, or how did you personally know that this is something that God called you, or God gave you this vision? You know what I mean? Because a lot of people might have ideas, but they literally don't know that this is their calling. So many people that we come across don't know their purpose and are wandering aimlessly because they don't have that. So how do you know when you have, well, I know everybody has a purpose, but how do you know that it was a calling?
Well, one, it was related to my testimony.
Mm.
I knew that I was an at-risk kid. I knew that I could have been another statistic.
Mhm.
Um, and I saw God take a person that was broken, um, that was literally destructive,
Mhm.
and transform her, just by putting people in my life and um me feeling a freedom of I had big time unforgiveness for my mom, for my father, for everybody that came into my life that hurt me big time. So to feel that release be gone, and then for this vision to come about, I knew that it was connected.
Mhm.
So it's always connected to your testimony, always connected to an experience that you had, that you seen God do a work in you. Therefore, he wants to see that work reciprocated in other people.
Mhm.
Um, and then secondly is being obedient. I feel like when God gives us a vision, it's more us of being obedient and taking a leap of faith. Because I can honestly say that I knew it was God, but I had some doubts because of it being so big.
Mhm.
And so the fact that my mom said, I'm gonna go help you, and we opened up the food pantry, was like, wow. And then I didn't know nothing about nonprofit. I didn't know nothing about food, being a food pantry, right? But I remember God speaking to me saying, you will never, just like the oil,
Not
it
running out.
while running out, the food pantry will never run out of food. These shelves will always be full. And so a miracle moment happened that, and this happened multiple times. There was no food on the shelves and my freezers were bare. And I remember doing an event at the food pantry, which would normally be closed, but I was there, and I remember receiving a phone call that I probably would never answer, but I answered the phone, and it was a tractor trailer telling me, "Hey, Walmart denied all this food, all this Tyson chicken food, and I need to drop it off at a food pantry. Would you like it?" And what's awesome about that is that I just finished having an interview with another nonprofit, and he saw my freezers being bare. And so that food not only filled my shelves, not only filled my freezers, but I had so much that I gave out to other nonprofits, right?
Wow.
So how do you know that it's a God vision? By your yes, being obedient, but also being attentive to the doors he opens, right? Because we go from a level of faith to faith every time. And so when it looked like there was no hope and God provided an open door,
Yeah.
there's another avenue for me to be like, yep, God, this is you. Right. And so he has done that continuously for the past 3 years. He has opened doors that no man can open. No man can open. Yeah. And no doors that no man can shut. So it's not something that you can figure out right away, if I'm gonna be honest. Right. It's just by you trusting God every step of the way. And every yes that you say, every God yes opens a door to the next level. And even if you say yes to something that it's not God, he will close the door and provide another opportunity. Because at the end of the day, we're in training.
Mm-hmm.
We're always being training, right? And God is so graceful that he will allow us to make the mistake so that we won't make it again. Right? And so I just saw God move. Even right now, I'm believing God for a massive building to provide resources. I don't know where it's coming from. But if God allowed us to be thus far into the vision, then he's going to provide the provision, right? So I just got to see what he does and trust him. And it may sound easy, but it's really just, Lord, if you said that you're going to do this, then I'm going to wait to see how you're going to do it and be attentive to those things. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you did. You did. You did. And I'm like, this, y'all see why I was inspired by her?
If it's too big, you got to trust God. That's just the bottom line. If you can't do it in your own strength.
Facts. I I will say this, y'all, I ain't tell y'all, but I actually spoke with Evelisse, was at the beginning of the week or last week or something like that. Like I was personally struggling, and I had a job opportunity, like to go back to my old job and be safe and be this and that. And I was like, Lord, is that you? You know, you see my finances and a job just plops back and you can always come back, Tisha. And I got three people that spoke to me that same week. Evelisse, Shannon randomly called me, and Melissa, which were my three trio people that I adore these ladies. I'm sure you'll see some of it, but whatever. And I yesterday yesterday morning, I called the person and I thanked them for the opportunity, but I told them I had to close the door myself to keep myself from going back because I promised a year, I committed a year, and I was gonna trust in that year. And then the person that got me the contact to even like open the door for me, I had a dropped in my spirit. My faith is going to be tested, but while this person witnesses my faith being tested, like it's going to break the chains of fear off of me and off of my that person, because that
Yeah.
person is trying to be helping me, like, oh, you know what, money's tight, just go back to work and get a job. They do that because they love me, but they don't understand the spiritual aspect of it. But when they see God show up for me, and he will, and he has, and he does continuously, they're going to see it, and they're going to know that it was only God. And I just to show you guys something, like I do the God moves so that you guys know that God does move, and I say it, he moves for me, he moves for her, he moves for you. And I also have a saying, change your circle, change your life. Who is your counsel? Because
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the three ladies that randomly back in, we talked, and they really gave me just the honest output, I might have gone back somewhere myself and closed the door and locked it and boxed myself back in, just out of fear. So I think it's so important on who you surround yourself.
Yeah. And I think, I feel like we need to be honest, authentic, and
Correct.
transparent, right? When God gives you a vision, it's for him to manifest himself in your life, but also for others to see
Absolutely.
that maybe have little faith,
Mhm.
right? And so one of the things that comes to mind all the time is that, you know, we are here to break generational curses, right?
Yes.
It's a privilege that God said, I'm gonna use Tish with her vision to break the generational curses in her life. And by that you said yes. You said yes to the vision, therefore you said yes to breaking those generational curses, not only in your life, not only in your kids' life, but in generations to come, right? And so for me, it was that. It was saying yes to break to God's assignment, um, to break those generational curses. And I think when we put it that way, we can see the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
It's a vision, right? It's not just a vision. It's that you were called to break something that's going to affect generations to come, right? And you need to say a yes. You need to know that there's going to be a struggle. You need to know that there's going to be a battle. You need to know that your faith is going to be tested. You need to know that there are times that you're going to want to quit because you don't see. There are times that you are going to question God and asking, Lord, did you really call me to do this? Right? But those are the times where you bask yourself in prayer, you bask yourself in worship, you surround yourself with prayer warriors, you surround yourself with people that are going to speak encouragement over your life and speak the vision over your life that God called you to do, and start going off from there, because it's a struggle. I struggle every single day trying to manifest um a vision that God called me to do. And I'm gonna tell you that, Tish, when you talk about the job, the offer that you were offered, I'm graduating from my master's program in clinical social work, right? I'm
Yes.
graduating this April.
Hold
And
on, guys. Pause that. Did you remember? Rewind it to the beginning when she said, let's keep it real. I didn't go to high school.
yeah,
You
yeah,
graduated with her master's.
with my master's. I'm the only one in my family with a master's degree.
Amen.
And I don't know that I'm graduating with my master's degree. And I was going through a transition with trying to file for my VA disability benefits because of my sickness. I was asking God, Lord, do you want me to go back to work? Because to be honest, I have a nonprofit, but I'm not employed by my nonprofit. Everything I do is volunteer work, right? But I need to be able to live. I need to be able to be sustainable, right? And so I was asking God, like, Lord, What do you want me to do? And I found myself looking on Indeed, trying to look at salaries, trying to apply for jobs, right? And I had to just be still at some point and be like, Lord, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't want to be outside your vision. And I know that if you gave me a vision, you want me to work it out. And so I know that working it out means that I'll have to be free in doing what you called me to do and not be tied to a corporate job, not be tied to man's perspective, but to be walking in God's perspective, right? And so right now, that's what it looks like. And so what's funny is that God opened the door for me to get my VA disability, which pray for me, y'all, because I'll find out by the end of the month whether they gave me 100%, and be employed, right? And I feel like these doors are opening now that I'm graduating, because it's my time to do just what God called me to do and not be worried about finances. So I say that to say, I was in your boat, right? Because a part of us wants to be in control and play it safe.
Yeah.
Right? But God doesn't call us to play it safe. It's easy for me to go on Indeed and apply for a job and make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. That's easy, right? Because I'm trusting in my own strength, in my own skills, in my own ability, right? But trusting in God means that, God, you're going to have to make this VA thing work so that I don't have to worry about my finances. God, you're going to have to make Hands of Hope work so that I can be employable for Hands of Hope, so that I can get exactly what you've called me to live, and provide for my needs. And so there's always a tug of war with our flesh and our spirit, right? And there's always a tug of war with the comfortable and the uncomfortable, because we want to be secure, whether in our finances, whether in our relationships, in our life in general. But those are moments where we gotta really just narrow it down and be like, God, I have to trust you in everything, just not in the little things, but also in the big things.
Absolutely. I prayerfully, as I do with every segment, that prays that it reaches the person that it needs to, because it's meant for somebody. And so I hope that somebody sees this, that you take it in, that it's real people working real life, but you know who we work it with? A real God.
Yeah.
Okay. A real God.
Amen. Amen. And I feel like, if the one thing that I can like give advice to or just speak over is that believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Believe in that God has given you. Believe that God can do anything through you as long as you are willing um to go through the fire. Because God doesn't call us to be comfortable. God calls us to be extraordinary. He calls us to be out of the box. He calls us to be set apart from the world. And nothing he gives us is simple,
Yeah.
because he's a big God. And so he gives us big visions. And the one thing that I saw God do, the one thing I learned, the one thing that he had to kind of carve from me, is to stop giving my vision to everybody else, to really believe that I can do all things through Christ who gives me the strength to do so. And just know that you're just a vessel that he is going to use to show people around you, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's community, the evidence of God present and living in the world today. And he is going to do it through you. He is going to manifest himself through you. And I hear people say, I want to see a miracle. God does miracles every day.
Yes.
We just don't recognize them and know that the miracle that he is trying to do is you. He's trying to transform you. He's trying to grow you. He's trying to mature you to do that one thing that you are gifted in, that one thing that you are talented in, that one thing that you had to go through the fire, and now you have a testimony to speak of because somebody is going through the same thing and they need to hear it from you. And that's the most powerful thing that I can say that God did in my life. And I'm grateful for that because he gave me hope. And my hope is to install that same hope to other people.
Yeah.